Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
I'm Dan.
Hi, I'm Jesi.
I'm Ari.
And I'm Josh. Today we're going to be talking about And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. This is the third Agatha Christie novel we've gone over on our channel. We did The Murder of Roger Ackroyd back in Season 5. And we did
Orient Express.
Murder on the Orient Express last season when Ellie was here.
I was on either of those.
I have to say that I am now like a super huge Agatha Christie fan. I've only read 2 of her books, and I just want to keep reading more. Like, I love these.
Yeah.
I'm not super. I wouldn't say I'm super huge, but I think that they're intriguing.
I love them.
This was absolutely one of my favorites, and reading it again for the second time was actually really good.
That's always a good thing.
Oh, that's when you had, like, that's the original title, The 10 Little Indians.
I have 10 Little Indians. The second title.
Well, yeah,
yeah.
10 was 10 little... I'm not going to say the word.
Yeah.
I also have somewhere, I have the 10 Little Indians copy, but it's in my mom's room, and I didn't feel like burying it out.
Okay. I got mine from the book garden.
I got mine from the book garden as well.
Mine's from Barnes & Noble.
2 for the book
They're
garden.
not as special.
Mine was on the internet.
But it was free because I had gift cards from Christmas.
That's not free. You still had to pay money.
I didn't
Somebody
pay
paid
for
for
it.
it.
Somebody
else
paid
did.
for it.
She used a card that gave her money from someone else.
So technically, any book that was
Who's
gifted
got the
is
discussion
free.
starter?
You do.
I do? Oh boy. Okay.
I think nobody, I feel like only one of us this season so far paid attention to who had the discussion starter.
I usually pick I should probably follow the Tory rule where the person that picks the book is the one that does it.
I always have a
I
discussion
don't
starter.
mind doing. I was just like I don't.
Yeah.
I feel like nobody paid attention to who had the discussion starter for this session. Like I don't know. Maybe this is me.
Why knew you had the discussion starter, just I didn't know how to bring it up.
I have a very interesting discussion starter.
What's
Oh
that?
boy, I'm excited.
When did you figure out who the killer was? Oh, by the
You go
way,
first.
wait. Just to let you know, all of you out there, this is a spoiler. This has spoilers. This discussion will have spoilers. So if you do not want to read this book, I mean, you will want to read this book, but if you want to not have the spoilers, get out. Just get out, because this is going to be
Stop.
spoilers.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Read the
this,
book.
Read this first, then come back and watch the discussion.
Then
Yes.
come back and watch the
But
episode.
any discussion we have on our channel is subject to spoilers.
Right.
Jesse, you
Anyway.
said...
There you go.
Yeah.
So who did we think the killer was
now
first? And when
I
did we realize it?
I knew because I followed as I was reading the book. The entire time I was reading the book, I had my thumb or my pointer finger on this page where the poem was, a little nursery rhyme.
28.
So that every time somebody died, I opened it up, I said, all right, the next person's going to die by chopping sticks. Okay, the next person's going to die by this. Because I picked up on that pretty quickly on how the characters died.
So they actually say that in like the first chapter.
Exactly. So when I got to a red herring swallowed one, and then there were 3, I was like, a red herring. Somebody prior is not actually dead. And so I went through and I thought about who could actually not be dead. Now, I think my original thought was...
That's where the term comes from, by the way.
Yeah,
From this book.
what was the... I couldn't... What the second one, the woman...
Mrs. Rogers.
Mrs. Rogers. So at first I thought maybe it was her, because she was, like, I felt like her death wasn't very, like, extravagant. There wasn't, like, blood or anything anywhere, and she didn't die in front of anybody. So I was like, maybe it was her. But then... as I got closer to the end, I was like, no, wait. The judge. So I actually came to the judge conclusion, like, as I finished it. And I can't even tell you why, because my first thought was maybe Mrs. Rogers, because I thought the judge had a bullet in his head. But then I was like, no, not the judge.
I didn't find out until like the very end.
Yeah, no,
I
had a
was
feeling.
the same.
I knew it wasn't Armstrong, though. When she was like, it's Armstrong, I'm like, it's not Armstrong!
I felt that, first I thought it was Blore because he had the greatest sense of skepticism. But I was thinking Narracott because he was the boatman that brought them there, and
Yeah,
he didn't show up.
I figured the judge because if you kind of go back to some of his passages where he's like talking to people, And even like when it's just talking about his thoughts, he doesn't actually be like, he's not actually like, I'm gonna die, like everybody else's thoughts were like, oh my god, I'm gonna die. His weren't. And that's like, so at first I thought it was maybe Mrs. Rogers because we never saw her thoughts, and like I said, she didn't die any bloody sort of way and not in front of anybody, so I was like, maybe she was faking it.
Yeah, I noticed
But
it the second time
then
I
I
was
was
reading it.
like, he never actually says or worries that he's gonna die, and I was like, you know what, it's gotta be him. So when we got to the epilogue, I was like, yes, I was right.
I felt that
so
lead,
satisfied.
going up to the end, I thought it was their own paranoia and their own actions that killed them. It was their own guilt that contributed to these certain circumstances taking place. Like Mrs. Brent was she was stung by a bee, and that's what killed. That's allegedly what.
Well,
killed
technically,
her.
we find it's a syringe.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a syringe,
but her paranoia was like,
Yeah.
oh, a bee, and she saw the bee, so she just thought it was a bee.
there was that. There was the Marston could have very well just choked on the drink, but it was poisoned.
Yeah.
There was Mrs. Rogers may have taken some medication that that knocked her out to the point that it killed her. It was just so many things. It was the circumstances taking place, and this whole idea that what they thought was going to happen, what they thought was happening to them.
Well, the one guy got crushed by a bear.
Yeah.
I think he's pretty clear what happened to him.
Yeah.
But and then you have, but with
I thought it was a bear statue.
yeah, with
It was
Claythorne
like a
killing
clock
Lombard,
or
and then
something, she said.
Claythorne being
Marble.
yeah,
The marble bear.
Yeah, marble bear of some sort. Sorry, go ahead.
but the whole idea that Vera Claythorne shot and killed Lombard and then went on to hang herself, those were pretty much it was a trap that was set by Wargrave ultimately, and was
Yep,
executed
that was
by
like
their paranoia.
that was like some real chance there, and he played that so well.
I
and
realized-
hoped-
I first realized it probably was Wargrave when we got to when there were only 3 people left. It was Bloor, Lombard, and Claythorne. And I kind of realized that like Lombard and Claythorne were still like around, and when then you had the bear clock that squished Bloor, right? So like I realized at that point that like there's still someone else. There's no way that the 2 of them or 3 of them are the only people left. And I then moved back and thought about Armstrong, and I'm like, well, Armstrong obviously still died just before that, and I'm like, well, Armstrong wouldn't have just killed himself. He wouldn't have
Well,
just
who was the
jumped
guy that
off.
got stuck in like the rocks of the river? They didn't find out until like near the end.
That was Armstrong.
That was
Yeah,
Armstrong.
That was Armstrong.
So that means that someone, I felt that someone must have pushed him off, and the only person who may have, like, had the ability to push him off that had not been, like, 100%, like I look back in the entire book trying to figure out, and it, like, Wargrave didn't, like, he had said he had been somewhere else.
Armstrong was Wargrave's footman too.
Yeah.
He helped him orchestrate,
Which
some
we
of the-
didn't know till the very end,
some
though.
of the
Yeah, and
murders.
that's why I was saying it was like, and I couldn't even tell you because I honestly thought that it was Miss Rogers, because like I said, she was the only one that didn't really die in front of somebody. She didn't have a very bloody death. It was just all of a sudden she went to bed and she didn't wake up. So, you know, she could have been faking it or something. But then, like I said, as I got closer to the end, it just kind of like occurred to me. I was like, wait a minute, you know, all these characters, anytime it talked about their thoughts or when it showed them talking to other people, they were all so paranoid, like, oh my god, I'm gonna be next. What if I die? I mean, for example, the general. He was he accepted that his fate and he's gonna die.
The
And
general was
it's
pretty
like,
much.
but the judge never accepted
He was
it.
pretty.
He never
General
said
MacArthur
anything.
though was pretty much. He pretty much had it.
Do you want to know what gave it away? What really gave it away, though? Darkness and light. I'll give you an example. Lay back in your chair like this. Pretend you're dead. Okay, Nick, turn off the light, please. Thank you.
It's so dark.
So you can hear me, but this is how dark it was when they went to examine Wargrave's dead body because of the fact that the candles were burnt out next to him. that means you couldn't possibly see enough to give a logical conclusion. You could turn it back on again. So to not give a logical enough conclusion for Armstrong made me think that like there's no way he could know that if it's so dark in the room. All the other areas were well lit, or there was obvious clear, like, oh, hypodermic needle, oh, knife, oh, sickness.
Mrs. Rogers was probably sleeping in a dark room.
I didn't.
Which
But
is
yes, but
what I thought.
Mrs. Rogers, I don't think would have been able to push Armstrong off the edge of the cliff. That was my other thought.
I thought it was Wargrave for like the longest time until he
Because
was
remember,
shot.
Wargraves was this really heavy, big
And that's
guy.
kind of where it threw me off. It was
But
like when he was shot. It's the thing
if
is,
you-
I
If you
And
look,
they put the judge's wig on his head.
but if you look on the page that said Wargraves was sitting in a chair, it specifically says the candles were burnt out and the room was dark. That's what it said. And as we just saw, I couldn't even see you. You're sitting right next to me. What makes you think Armstrong's going to be able to tell that by
And
looking in a dark room? If they light the room, that's
And that
different,
was
but-
even assuming that Armstrong wasn't in on it. Obviously, you know, we find out that he was in on it and saying that he was dead, even though he knew he wasn't. But
Anyway, that's
I mean,
how I kind of came to the conclusion over the last three people.
yeah, like
I
I
didn't
said,
notice that until I read the
what
book
it
a second time
was.
because I mentioned I read the books before. I'm talking about like when I first read it, I didn't pick up on that. When I read it the second time, I was like, oh, that's how he got away with that. Because the thing is, I already knew who the killer was.
Because at
And then
that
you
point,
see
the game
back
was just
in
like a
2020
whole new.
vision.
they just
when
started noticing new things.
Wargrave died, I wasn't sure if it was Armstrong or Wargrave at that point. I immediately thought it was Armstrong just because he faked. I don't think he's really examining him like properly. I think there's something suspicious going on. But then when Armstrong died, I'm like, well, there are two possible people he might not have been able to examine properly due to different conditions, and I don't think Mrs. Rogers is big enough to push Armstrong off the
Well, they
edge.
did
I think
say
it was,
that Armstrong wasn't a very big guy.
I know,
Like,
but still,
that
she
it
was
was
also
Bloor and Lombard
And,
who were
and
the
Armstrong
bigger
was the one
guys.
to examine Wargrave. So the thing is, it'd be like, you know, you would rather inspect the victim that you
And they
shot.
can always have an alternate methodology. He didn't necessarily have to be pushed off.
That's
He
just
wasn't
the
tricked.
first. Yeah, but that was the first thing that came to my
Oh no,
head.
what kind of gave it away for me? Like
I
I
could've
said,
been
I
wrong.
didn't come up with it right away. It was like right at the end before we got to the epilogue as the two cops were talking. All of a sudden it just like it dawned on me. Like it was just this like light bulb. Just like bink, and I was like, he never seemed paranoid. He was never he was just never worried that he was gonna be the next to die.
That's
Like
similar,
ever.
That's
Even
similar
in his
to
private thoughts.
That's similar to the methodology I had in mind with the murder of Roger Ackroyd, but that one was very predictable. But on the topic of we talked about the detectives in this piece, I think that it was an interesting decision to make this a standalone and not a Poirot book because I think
Yeah,
that
that's good.
this was very character-driven, character-oriented. I think that you really had to keep your great deal of concentration on the 10 people that were in this piece that were going one by one. I think Poirot warrants a lot more attention.
I love how like it's like all the people are killed based on like the nursery rhyme, which I think is really
Yeah, that's the way that Wargrave orchestrated
she
it.
did it.
Yeah.
Like,
And it was interesting how the methodology that he had behind doing it, because he wanted to do it with people that deserved it per se. These people all were either murderous or neglectful. Though he felt
we don't
that
really learn the full story behind why he's doing it, because the thing is, for like
It
a
was
long
his
time they
point of view.
like try and defend their innocence. Like the one girl who let the kid drown, just says it was just an accident. She didn't do it on purpose.
he has no remorse over his because he felt that he made the right decision.
Which, as we found
On
out in the
sentencing.
end, that he was right in making that decision because the guy ended up being guilty with evidence that showed up
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
So we shows how he ended up picking up all the evidence that the thing is, they did do these things that he accused them of.
So that was how that
Also,
or
I
out of the
think
reach
I
of the
think
law.
on a slight segue, this book has a phenomenal amount of drama in it. Like, if you're just like, oh, who's going to be the next one to die? Who's going to be the next one to die? You know someone's going to die. Are they going to die exactly the same way that it was in the
that's why, like, the entire time I was reading it, I kept a finger right at the beginning of my book where that poem was, because as soon as somebody died, I was like, did they die?
I was wondering.
Oh, I see what they did there. Okay, how's the next one gonna die?
I was just wondering how in the world a herring would be able to swallow a human.
See, when I got to that, like, and that's what, like, I mean, and again, you know, being in the time that we're in, a red herring, like, obvious to me, like, a red herring swallow, they don't mean a fish. Like, and I don't know, so that was kind of a giveaway at, like, the very beginning, that there was going to be a little twist. And of course, when, what was her name, Vera, she's like, a red herring, that means somebody didn't die, Armstrong didn't really die. And I was just like, it's not Armstrong that didn't, Armstrong died. Somebody else didn't.
Well, the thing is, honestly, they didn't know that, we did.
Yeah, I know, we did, but it was just like, and that was
and the
like
fact that the Indians were being removed.
And you have
10 little soldiers.
The Indians
Politically
chopping
Mine said that Indians in it.
You have to be politically correct. 10 little
I'm not
soldiers.
politically correct.
The chopping of the sticks, where I was thinking that the person who was chopping the sticks would actually chop themselves in half, but Mr. Rogers was just chopping up sticks at somebody often there.
Yeah.
So.
I think it was actually, and for me, like, just again reading it, it was a little fun for me, as horrible and morbid as this sounds. When I would look at, like, okay, this is the next line. How's the next one gonna die? Like, how is somebody gonna die from a bumblebee because there's no bees? And then, of course, we get to Vera, who's freaking out, and she's like, there's no bees on the island! And I'm like, yeah, how's this person gonna die of bees?
You know, she thinks she gets stung by a bee, but it's actually just a needle.
And that's when I started to pick up on, like, all how things are going to happen. I'm like, okay, there's no zoo on the island. How's this person going to die at a zoo? Okay, there's got to be like there's got to be something that I missed up until this point that, you know, represents a bear of something. And sure enough, it was the bear statue that she referenced, like, once.
Of all the mystery novels I've read, this is probably, like, one of my favorites. And even reading it again, even though I know the ending, it was still good read, because the thing is, there was stuff I was able to pick up on that I didn't pick up the first time I read.
And Agatha Christie.
Out of the three Agatha Christie books that I've read, this is my favorite thus far.
Yeah, me too.
This one's really good.
Yeah, it was.
This is the best Agatha Christie.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I really liked Murder on the Orient Express.
Murder on the Orient Express was good. The one issue with it is that there were, watch the Murder on the Orient Express video for that. But this one, I don't think there's like any faults in that.
Yeah, if you're a big fan of mystery, definitely read the book.
If you're a big fan of
this is really good.
Yeah.
And it's not like too over the top either. Like, it's just enough. Like, you've got the drama, and like, you know, because people are dying. But I mean, you can look at and see how tiny the book is, in my opinion. Like, you know, it's a quick read. I finished this Saturday. I started it Saturday, finished it Saturday.
Those are really scary because like they're all trapped in an island, so you're wondering like who's the killer.
Yeah,
like a bit of claustrophobia there.
Yeah, but I also feel like it's not your typical like there's a murderer on the loose kind of mystery. It's a classic kind of.
Yeah, there's no Michael Myers here.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a classic mystery, and it's like you're
and it's interesting.
You're like,
it's interesting the
but
reasoning
it's not
behind
over
it
the top.
as well. The reasoning behind it is very interesting. It's like I must commit a murder because I've always wanted to commit a murder and I wanted to make it as elaborate as possible. Like it was
murderer.
It was like just the motive was I have to do it.
I also love the things that it was named by someone called UN Owen, which stands for unknown. Which I thought was really good.
Clever.
Because the thing is, I was like UN Owen. I'm like, and then when I mentioned it, I was like, unknown.
Like it makes sense when it's like unknown. But I didn't.
That
was something like when I was reading on the back by a mysterious UNON. Like that's not something that I immediately clicked for me.
No.
And then when they were like unknown, and I was like, I get it.
And the announcement, and then you have the announcements with the accusations.
Oh, that was creepy. Like I always.
Orson Welles did was the voice that did that in the film adaptation.
I haven't seen the film. I kind of want to watch it.
It's a terrible ending. They ruined the ending. Yeah. Was it the girl who shoots the guy? they both live at the end, and Wargrave dies.
Oh, that's disappointing.
They added a romance that didn't need to be in that movie.
Yeah, that's what they tend to do in movies.
So it actually, and then also reading this book, it just reminded me of so many different, like, you know, how many different, like, modern movies and TV shows that, you know, do something like this. Like Family Guy does it. They do.
Oh, yeah, Family Guy did it.
Is that the one where Chris and Herbert were paired up?
Yeah,
That was
and,
the one
and
with-
then there were fewer. That's like one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah,
Diane
that
It's so
Simmons
funny.
is the killer. Diane Simmons is the killer.
Yeah, and then they also have Clue.
It's
Clue
you.
with
You're the guy who-
I can't think
The
of
movie?
Yeah.
Oh, that was
Oh.
great. You know, the great thing about Clue, the movie, is that there's 3 different endings to it. They
Yes,
directed
yes.
if
3
you watch the
different
DVD,
endings.
you can watch with all 3 of the endings, or just watch with one of the 3.
Yep, I love. That's one of my
Tim
favorite
Curry's
movies.
amazing there.
And they,
He
and they
is.
alternated it
Love
based
Tim
off
Curry
of
in that.
each release. They just picked a random one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that. Then
The
they
one
also
I got had all
have,
3 endings on it. Like,
If you've ever seen the movie Mindbreakers, it's the same thing. They're all trapped on an island for military training, and then they just start dying, and you're like, all right, I have to figure out who the serial killer is. So it's just
so like this was kind of like the
yeah.
pioneer of like those types of mysteries that people do. Like,
Exactly.
You know,
somebody are
I
trapped
know,
in somewhere
I know
where
who
they
the
can't get any
serial
help,
killer
and the thing is, then they start dying one by one. You know.
Yeah, Josh is the serial killer. I mean, he said earlier that he doesn't eat cereal, so he's a cereal. He doesn't like eating cereal.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
let's not talk about that death.
Yeah, if Josh ends up eating cereal, we're like, this isn't Josh, this is an alien.
Alrighty then, do we have any final thoughts?
I like this book.
Rankings.
Definitely a good read. I'm glad the thing is, my
So good.
teacher in high school gave us the read instead of Romeo and Juliet.
It was
Much better.
quite an interesting.
Yeah, but I'm like,
I wish
I'd
I read
rather
this in
read
high
this.
school. I wish Miss Conocello was like, "Hey, everybody, it's Agatha Christie."
I'm definitely an Agatha Christie fan.
Oh,
Like,
I-
I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I was
I've
like, all right,
always
Murder
been an
on the
Agatha
Orient
Christie fan.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of want to read more of her now after I read this book.
Murder
This
of
is
the
second
Orient
time.
Express was the first Agatha Christie. No, I read like one of her short stories or something like way back when, but you know, like I couldn't even tell you too much about it. It was a guy in a cave, like that's all I remember. So I kind of I'm counting Murder on the Orient Express as my first Agatha Christie book, and I was like, all right, well I really want to read, and then there were none. Now I read this one, I'm like, I just have to keep reading her, like, and she's got so many, like I don't know about you guys, but my book back here has like some of them.
I have
And
just
then
about
more of
every
them.
Agatha. I have just about every Agatha
and more.
Christie at home. I've got this one. I've got Murder on the Orient Express. I've got Murder of Roger Ackroyd. I've got the ABC Murders. I got NRM. I got the Miss Marple one's Body in the Library. Murder of the Vicarage. I've gotten all of them because my mom.
Death on the Nile.
She's really
You
good.
know.
My mom has all of them. So.
And that, like,
Alrighty then,
The
how would
most
we
wacky-
rank this on a 0 to 5 scale with half stars permitted? Dan?
5!
Ari, wait your turn.
No, it's a 5.
I would say 5 too. I think it's like I've never really been a big fan of many mysteries. But the thing is, like, this was a very good mystery book, and the thing is, I just love the thing is that the reason why I love so much is the thing is many other popular mystery ones have played off this, but I don't think they've done it as good as Agatha Christie has done it.
Original.
And I just love the thing is that, you know, even if you don't figure out who it is to the end, it's still a good read.
Even
You don't
I
have
feel
to
like
figure it out.
even
It's better if you don't figure it
Yeah, I
out.
was gonna say even if you do figure it out, I feel like the way it's done, it's just done with so almost flawlessly. Like I want to try to go through and find a hole in it, but when I keep thinking about it, I'm like, there really isn't.
Honestly,
one.
the darkness thing where it specifically said the candles were burnt out. That's the only.
But it's not even really a
Hole.
hole because
It's-
they planned it that way.
And what would you give it?
Like I would give it a 5 too. Like it was planned that way.
Um,
Everything that happens in the book has a reason as to why it happened.
5.
So
You want to elaborate?
5.
I
5. 5.
Okay.
5-star
pressure's
rating.
on, Josh. The pressure's on. Is it a 5-star panel?
I'm giving it a 4.
Come on, Josh.
To me, I thought it was her best that I've read. I like the fact that it drew a great deal of attention to the characters, and as much as I like Poirot, I think that it was a good idea to make
Okay,
this
what didn't you
a
like
standalone.
about it?
But I still felt that this was a. I still felt that the characters existed merely because of the fact.
Don't hit me.
I thought they existed merely on the fact that it was that they were there for the murder mystery in itself.
Alright, well, now, hold up. I have to stop you. This is a murder
I think-
mystery book where you need
It is a
characters
murder
to
mystery
die.
book, but I think that it still had that sense of pulp to it.
That was not me.
I don't think it was.
Books are not orange juice.
I feel like, now, see, the characters have background. They have reasons why they did something.
And they all did
And
something wrong.
they all did something
questionable. That's someone viewed as questionable.
Questionable. So they have some substance, enough substance to be characters with background, and of course they're there to be murdered because this is a book about
Murder.
I would say that is the case, but I still feel that it was.
Blah blah blah.
I still feel that it was a. I still think it was a good book. I don't think that I could give it a perfect rating because I still feel that there's that element.
That's okay. Don't be heartbroken.
Yeah.
I'm heartbroken.
It's okay. We don't need him.
I just give it a 4. I just don't think it it hit me the way that, or I think it was great. It just, there's a lot of books of this nature that are very entertaining reads, but I just can't rate them.
You think there's actually another book that's just like this?
What do you mean just like this?
Like the way it was laid out, the way it was. I mean, I know there's mysteries, but this particular
But
kind.
I
and
would
then
say-
there's
Because
always.
Can you really blame it? It was kind of one of the
I would
first.
say something.
It was the first, I'm
It was
pretty
one of the
Yeah,
first.
I don't know what
It was. It was. I would say that something like Along Came a Spider, the very early books of the Alex Cross series by James Patterson, really, they had a great deal of richness and quality to them. You had a great sense of the fleshed out characters, and
But did they all die? Was it and then there were none, or
It
is
wasn't-
it as and then there was one?
it
Because
was.
I think
it was
that's
a-
what sets this aside.
It was.
is that
It was
That
an
we believe
interesting.
everyone's
It's
dead.
an interesting way that she played with the. It was an interesting way that she played with the nursery rhyme. It's just that whether or not it hit a spark, and
just the way I see it is that yes, there are other stories like this, but then it always ends up being the one person left standing to kill the murderer, or the murderers, like that horror movie Identity.
Right.
It's the murderer left standing. It's always somebody left
See,
standing.
in this case, it was
this
Lombard
is
and
nobody's left standing.
In this case,
Yeah.
it was Lombard and Claythorne. Claythorne kills Lombard.
nobody technically.
Claythorne
Yeah, in a way,
kills herself, and then
nobody
you
is
believe.
left standing.
You
And I think
believe.
that's
because
what makes
Wargrave
it
ultimately kills himself.
Exactly, but and that's what I'm
But-
saying. It's like this. I feel like is unique because in all of the
And
other
Claythorne also killed
renditions,
herself.
yeah, in all the other renditions, it's always the murderer left standing or the person who defeated the murderer is left standing. It's always one person left standing or two people left standing. This one, nobody is technically left standing. It's
Yeah.
and then there were none.
I do like how the thing is, he is able to like end up shooting himself in the head.
Yeah, that was very well planned.
It was-
But like, and that I don't know. I think that's why I like this so much is because it takes that story that I've seen so many times. Like I think I named 4 just now: Identity, Mindbreakers, Family Guy. You know, they're always taking this, and there's always somebody
It
left
de- it
standing. And then
definitely
there's
does-
this one's that's unique.
It's definitely, it has inspired a lot of media, but I still, I gotta stand where I am because...
No, it's at least the
yeah,
4.
Yeah, at least it's a 4.
Yeah, it's something I would
Positive.
highly suggest that people check this out and read it. So, I think that the argument's not whether or not, it's difficult to say that there are negative qualities to it because there are not negative qualities. It's just not it's just not excellent. It's very good, but
There's a lot of negative qualities if you read the original edition.
yeah, this is the original edition.
Did they say the N word of that?
No, this is the
the
next
second,
one.
the second.
And also,
original.
it also
Second.
explains exactly how Wargrave kills himself in the end and why he did what he did.
It was interesting that was incorporated as well, and how the detectives couldn't come up with any kind of conclusion.
Yeah.
Either.
Until, of course, they read the letter.
Yeah.
Assuming they read the
Assuming
letter.
they read the letter.
He just put it in a bottle and threw it in the sea. So who
Well, Agatha Christie got a hold of it.
knows?
Alrighty then. If
I
you,
always like to say there's nothing more deadlier than a pen.
Nothing deadlier. No, more deadlier.
if you're interested in
Sorry.
checking out, and then there were none, we each have a different edition. Mine is the 10 Little Indians edition, and Ari and Jesi have, and then there were none. The one that's most familiar is the one that Ari has.
This I got at the Book Garden in, where is it?
Cream Ridge, New Jersey.
Cream Ridge. Yes.
Alrighty then, be sure to join us next time for another episode of Gladiators. For now,
Keep
reading.
reading!
Reading.